Welcome back to the Master Your Money podcast with me, Marini Jackson, your guide to mastering credit, building wealth, and creating financial freedom. Let's dive into today's episode. So, last week we talked about being financially prepared for life's emergencies. This week, I want to specifically dive into managing your student loans during a federal natural disaster. Now, I did share that in the area of the country of the United States where I live, around this time of the year or at the time of this recording, we are in the midst of hurricane season. We've been very blessed so far that there haven't been a lot of named hurricanes, but that's not to say every year that's the situation. I know in prior years there were several years where there were numerous named hurricanes, but we specifically want to talk about making sure you're not getting derailed due to a natural disaster. So some things that are very important to know is if there is a federal disaster declaration and whether it applies to you. I'll just talk about the area of the country where I live. I live in the South. And one thing prior to major tropical storms, major storm systems coming to my area, the governor will declare a state of emergency. He'll, ahead of what potentially could hit the area. That's one thing I can consistently say that happens is the government, our state government, go ahead and make sure we have that declaration made. So if any type of spaghetti model projections may say that one city is going to be hit, but it's actually another one that gets the bad weather, then the whole state has been declared or has declared a state of emergency. So federal agencies can actually offer special assistance when you're in an area that has been declared a federal disaster area. So you want to first start with whatever official resources are being offered. I know a few years ago there was not a hurricane that hit our area, but my region had effects of a particular tropical storm, and that included flooding. There was massive flooding where roads were closed. People could not leave their homes. Water was getting in people's homes, things of that nature. So there were many initiatives to ensure that those impacted individuals got whatever federal help, whether it was with their insurance company or specific organizations that were offering relief, that they had access to those things. So with your student loans in particular, you want to start with, like I said, those federal resources, but also contact your loan service provider rather than assuming that your normal repayment rules still apply. So if you're not home, your first priority is making sure that you are taking care of yourself, your family, but make sure when you are at a safe place, you contact your loan service provider as soon as possible. And if that disaster has reduced your income, for instance, if your employer, if the building where you work was completely destroyed and you can't work, or if there's any unexpected expenses, things of that nature, communicate with your service provider and ask them, tell them what's going on, communicate, but ask if there's any type of disaster related relief, if they have any payment flexibility or any temporary options available for your loan type. Also, I want to say this. Yes, our student loans are important. Credit cards and all of our other financial bills are important, but during a disaster, you want to prioritize your immediate needs first, and that's making sure you have housing, you have food, utilities, transportation, and any medical needs that you're taking care of. So those 5 things are the things that are top priority. And you don't want to drain your emergency resources like your emergency fund to simply make student loan payments. So put your basic needs first. Don't take from that pillar of that house that you built, the housing, the food, utilities, the transportation, and your essential medical to pay student loans. Also, if you can, and this is why in many of my previous podcast episodes, I mentioned automate your payments. Don't automatically stop making your payments. A disaster doesn't automatically cancel or pause your student loan repayments. So your options, actually, I'm just going to be very, very transparent. It's going to depend on whether you have federal student loans or if you have a private loan, and if they have any type of or any specific relief available to you. But again, contact your service provider to find out what applies to your situation. And also make sure you document everything. Keep all records of any disaster related expenses you incur, meaning if you're driving your car, you're getting gas, you're getting lodged, you have to get lodging, your food costs, your insurance claims, anything from FEMA or any other organizations that are offering disaster assistance. Also, if your income is interrupted, you want to make sure you have those dates that income is disrupted, the dates and the times that you communicated with your loan service provider, and any payment arrangements you make or any confirmations that they're making for you. So your documentation is extremely important. If you can get it in writing, that's phenomenal. Meaning if they can email you a copy of whatever you've talked about with them, because obviously if you're evacuated, you're not getting your postal mail. But you want to have that documentation just in case you have to make any type of disputes. So I did mention private student loans. I personally had federal student loans and then consolidated, I think, 1 or 2 into a private loan. So some of the things that apply to having a federal student loan, unfortunately, with a private student loan provider did not apply. If you have federal student loans, you can go to, and I have the website up, to studentaid.gov, and that is the official government site, the US government website for your federal student aid. So again, go to studentaid.gov if you have a federal student loan, and that will give you information about things you can do if you are a borrower, or even if you're a current student and you have some student loans. With your federal as well as your private student loans, again, as I said, they are very different. They could have different policies and protections. And if you have that private loan, make sure you contact your lender directly and ask about any type of disaster or hardship assistance. Some student loan providers may call it forbearance, meaning that for a certain window of time, they are not requiring you to make payments, but your interest is still accruing during that time, meaning you'll still have to pay interest, but the payment, because of the natural disaster or that federal disaster, you're not required to make the payment at that time. Also, watch out for scams. There are a lot of scammers I get calls almost every single day, meaning 7 days a week, from unknown numbers. And for me, I know some of them are scams. I've even been in the car with my mother and she had a scam call. It wasn't about student loans or anything like that, but people get really creative when there are natural disasters, and unfortunately, everyone's intent is not good during those times. So make sure that you are contacting your provider directly, and if you're getting calls regarding your student loans, verify that phone number on the caller ID is what matches what's on their paperwork and on the website for that particular provider. Um, when you're vulnerable financially, that's when the scammers are going to show up. So definitely be cautious of anyone promising to cancel your student loans or erase them, or if they're asking for any type of upfront fees. But in particular, if it's an unsolicited message, that's something that should raise a flag for you. Also, when your financial crisis passes, because it's going to pass, it's not going to last forever. Um, don't rush and throw every extra dollar at your student loans. Make sure you reestablish your emergency savings. Make sure your income is stabilized. Catch up on your essential bills, and then revisit that debt repayment strategy that you have. So again, make sure you communicate with your loan service provider. Keep any documentation together, so keep that organized, any communication. Also, you want to understand all of your relief options before you make decisions. And again, know the difference between the federal student loans and private student loans. And then also making sure that you have a recovery plan in place once everything gets stable and the crisis passes. So financial resilience is not about never experiencing a financial crisis. It's about having a plan for what you will do when one happens. So it's always important to have a plan in place before disaster strikes. And this is from the Bible. Proverbs 27:12 says, "The prudent see danger and take refuge." So if you see, in advance that there's going to at some time there's going to be an emergency, and in this case we're talking specifically about natural disasters, then you want to begin preparing now, preparing not only the emergency supplies, but also financially. And this isn't simply about me telling you to pay your student loans. It's about protecting your finances, protecting your household, understanding all of your options, communicate early with your provider, and then also making some informed financial decisions during your recovery. So again, we always want to be prepared. We always want to make sure that we are communicating early and often, and making sure, again, as I said, that financial house, your necessities are taken care of. But we don't want to forget the student loans. But in times of disaster, that is not the top priority, but making sure we communicate with our provider is very important. So I thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Master Your Money podcast. Let me know in the comments below if this has been of value to you, and also any tips that you may have as well. If you've gone through any type of natural disaster and had to make those calls or communicate with your service provider, and also some solutions that you've taken an action you've taken yourself. But if you are ready to take the next step, you can go to my website, www.virtuefinancialsolutions.org, and there you'll find resources and also more information about my programs to help you take the next step in your financial journey. But until next time, remember, you don't just manage your money, you master it.